Welcome back to Max Finds the Facts. Anyways, we have some really exciting EIDL grant news regarding the $15,000 EIDL grant. It has been confirmed, and we have some other massive news regarding the potential ability to reapply for the EIDL grant if you missed that December 27th deadline. So we got some really exciting stuff here. So let's first dive into what we covered in the last video and then go into the questions that the SBA responded to me directly confirming the grant program. So starting off, I was looking at the stimulus bill the other day. Oh, and sorry, I know this shirt is weird. I know I look like the love child of the Hamburglar and Fabio or something like that, but just don't let that distract you too much. Let's jump into the stimulus bill. I was looking at this the other day. So I noticed when I was looking at the stimulus bill, it says here on the top, in addition to the amounts otherwise available, there's appropriated $15 billion for the EIDL grant program, the Targeted EIDL Advance. Like, okay, that seems good. It says $10 billion of that is going to go to hard-hit businesses under Section 331 of the Economic Aid to Hard-Hit Businesses Act. That was the stimulus bill, that was part of the stimulus bill that was passed in December. So that's additional funding for the grant program we already have, the Plus Up program, where whatever you received in the EIDL grant, you would then get the difference between that and $10,000. If you received $1,000, you'd get $9,000 to up that to $10,000 as long as you hit a few targeted criteria. So there's more funding there. So that's good news in itself. But then scrolling down a little bit, it says there's additional $5 billion in funding available to covered entities under the EIDL grant section of the CARES Act that had suffered an economic loss of greater than 50%, employs no more than 10 employees, and is $5,000. So I'm like, okay, is this a $15,000 EIDL grant? I mean, this is super surprising because there was no mention of this. There's even as of right now, I haven't seen a single article on this $15,000 EIDL grant program. Like we're the first to discover this as far as I know. So then it finishes off by saying, this is all with respect to the covered entity in which the payment is made in addition to any payment made under either the CARES Act or the second stimulus bill in December. So it's that plus up, $10,000 plus $5,000. So I reached out to the SBA to get some confirmation on several questions I had with this to see, like, is this really what we think it's going to be? And they have responded back to me very quickly. So I've been in contact with one of the heads of disaster assistance. I can't unfortunately give their name or their email out. I know a lot of people ask that, but they want to remain anonymous. If you want to check my legitimacy, my contact with the SBA, I have videos in the past where I've talked to heads of the SBA, so I have connections there. I guess you're just gonna have to trust, some point there. Also, before we hop into that, I know a lot of people have been interested in the stock markets recently. Maybe you've hopped in for the first time ever. There's a link in the description where you can get 2 completely free stocks if you make an account with Webull. You've probably heard this before if you've been on my channel before, but I think it's an awesome deal. Check it out, plus you'll be helping out this channel. Now let's move on to the emails, the questions and the answers. So this is the questions that I was curious about. I said I was hoping to get a bit of clarification on the latest stimulus bill and EIDL grants. I gave a section of the stimulus bill that I was referring my questions to, and my questions here were, does this increase the total EIDL potential advance to $15,000 per eligible business? Now remember, this is on top of whatever EIDL loan you received, on top of your stimulus check, on top of both rounds of paycheck protection funding, on top of everything, $15,000, and it's a grant. My second question, does covered entity, in this case, refer only to a business who has fewer than 10 employees, has seen an 8-week to 8-week reduction in gross income of 50% or more, comparing 2019 to 2020, as opposed to 30% gross reduction in revenue before, in the $10,000 targeted advance? And do they have to be within that low income census tract? My third question, will people who have already applied for the EIDL grant program be invited to get up to $15,000 to apply for this, or will it be automatic? And number 4, will the grant program be opened back up to new applicants given the additional funding? And the answer there is probably the most exciting answer in all of this. So let's just get into the answers and start with my first question here. So my first question, does this increase the total EIDL potential advance amount to $15,000 per eligible business? The answer here is yes. It has been confirmed. $15,000 in total advance. So he says a business with 10 employees that received the maximum $10,000 for the original advance last year could also potentially receive the supplemental additional EIDL advance of $5K. So that's what they're calling it, the supplemental targeted EIDL advance of $5,000 if they meet the following eligibility requirements. Number one, the business is located in a low-income community. Now that's defined, you're probably familiar with this, but it's defined as having a poverty rate of 20% or more, or comparing your median family income of your census tract to either the metro area or the statewide area. They have a map, but I'm going to show you in just a second here. Number two, you must have an economic loss of greater than 50%. So that economic loss is your gross receipts, your gross revenue, and it's going to compare an 8-week period in 2019, any 8-week period, to an 8-week period in 2020. You have to show that reduction in revenue. So as I mentioned in my last video on this, my speculation was right, where they're kind of doing a funnel, where the first part of the funnel was the EIDL grant where you received $1,000 per employee. It didn't really matter what your economic loss was as long as you were in business already before the COVID pandemic happened. And then this funneled down to the targeted advance where you could get that top up from whatever you received to $10,000. And now we're at an even more narrow point of the funnel where you have to show an even greater loss in revenue to receive this benefit. And then the third criteria here, you have to have 10 or fewer employees. And businesses that qualify for the targeted EIDL advance and receive the full $10,000 could also receive that supplemental $5,000 if they hit all that criteria, to a total of $15,000. Now, taking a look at this map here real quick, all of this linked in the description. This is how you can tell if you're in a low income area. Let me just zoom this out even further and I'll just pick a random area. Let's go Colorado. So if we go here on Colorado, we zoom in. And now you have to zoom in all the way to your street and your house to make sure you're in the right census tract, because some people get confused about this. And then you can just click on the tract and it'll tell you low income community, yes or no. This one is no. This one right here is yes. And it'll tell you why, what the poverty rate is, what the median family income is as a percentage of the greater area median family income. So this map is really useful, and you can use this to determine whether you qualify or not. Now, they're still sending out emails for the targeted EIDL advance just for the plus up. They haven't even sent out emails for this $15,000 one. So it's still rolling out. And as of right now, I don't think anyone has actually received that plus up to $10,000 yet. We're getting right at the end of the window where people should be starting to receive it very soon. At least I haven't heard of anyone receiving it as of right now. Now on to the next question. Defining a covered entity. We briefly talked about this, but does a covered entity refer to a business who has fewer than 10 employees? Yes. Has the 8-week to 8-week reduction in gross receipts of 50%? Yes. Is in a low income census tract? Yes. And they base that on this policy map, which that policy map, according to the SBA, is based on their most recent census data. So if you use other census maps and it appears that your census tract is low income, but then the SBA map isn't, they're saying, well, our data is newer here, so this is what we're going with. I know it's not the greatest answer, especially because there's certain people who say, hey, I qualify on this map, that's census data, but not this one. And they're just kind of like, well, this is the newest data, unfortunately. There's also a note here. A covered entity also means that there also may be some eligibility restrictions based on business activity. For example, agricultural enterprises such as farmers and ranchers were eligible for the original EIDL advance and continue to be eligible for the COVID-19 EIDL loan, but are not eligible for the target advance or the supplemental $5,000 advance. Now, this won't apply to most people, most businesses. As long as you hit that targeted criteria, you will be able to get the target advance and the supplemental advance. But just said there is a caveat there. The third question, will people who have already applied for the EIDL grant program be invited to up their grant to $15,000, or will this be automatic? And he said, we are still planning the process for how applicants will be able to request the supplemental targeted EIDL advance of $5,000, so he can't provide further details at this time. I will let you know as soon as I know, so make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell. That way you can know as soon as I know. And I'm keeping my eyes peeled on this stuff. I'm assuming there will be another email sent. Of course, this could change. This might not be right, but I'm assuming there'll be an email sent just like the target advance. You click it, you go into a portal, you submit some kind of documentation that certifies you have fewer than 10 employees, and you certify somehow that you have a reduction in revenue of 50% or more. Bada bing, bada boom, $15,000 in your pocket. All right, last question. This is probably the most exciting question of them all. Will the grant program be opened back up to new applicants given the additional funding? So there's $15 billion in additional funding here. So I'm like, well, is this going to allow new people to apply? Because this is one of the biggest issues most people have is if I miss the application deadline, I'm just out of luck here or what? It's kind of unfortunate for someone who didn't apply before December 27, 2020. The answer here, they said possibly, which is better than what I had received about a month ago when they said there are no plans of doing so. I said, but we don't have an estimated time frame for this yet for when that may occur. There's a greater likelihood that we'll accept new applications for the targeted EIDL advance because the last stimulus bill appropriated another $10 billion for the targeted EIDL advance, bringing the total to $30 billion. And then this act also includes $5 billion for the supplemental, that 5K advance. So basically, because there's more funding, the odds of this thing being opened up to new people is greater than ever before. But what they're going to have to do is see how much they have to send out. I mean, pulling out the calculator, $30 billion. If you divide that by, we should be able to do this in our heads, right? 30 billion divided by 10,000, that's 3 million businesses. 30 billion divided by $15,000, that'd be 2 million businesses that they could completely fund with this, not counting the thousands that were already sent under the CARES Act. So this is a really exciting update, and $15,000 advance, the possibility for this program to be opened up to new people. I mean, that sums it up. So I'd like to thank you for watching this exciting update, and I hope you have a profitable day.